Have you ever argued so hard that even when you won, something in you felt smaller? That quiet sting after the noise fades, when you realize you gave away your calm just to prove a point. Power slips away the moment emotion takes the lead. Sometimes silence cuts deeper than any retort. Stay a little longer. Let's explore why. Have you ever noticed how some people can walk into a room and say nothing, yet everyone feels them? Their calm cuts through the noise. Their silence commands the kind of attention that shouting never could. It's not arrogance, it's presence. A kind of stillness that doesn't beg to be understood, yet somehow controls the room. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this power, the art of not arguing. Because every time you argue, you walk into a battlefield that isn't yours. You fight a war you didn't declare, and in the process, you lose something far more valuable than the argument itself. You lose your composure, you lose your frame, you lose your unseen advantage. Influence has never been about volume, it's about perception. The one who argues is the one who exposes his weakness. Arguments appeal to reason, but people are not creatures of reason. They are ruled by ego, pride, and emotion. The moment you argue, you confess something quietly devastating, that you can be provoked, that you need to prove yourself, that someone else has the power to pull you off balance. The Stoics warned against this centuries before Machiavelli put it into strategy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When you argue, you become what you oppose. You mirror their chaos, their pride, their noise. Imagine this. Someone mocks you in public, tries to make you look small. Your first instinct is to strike back, to defend yourself, to prove them wrong. But what if you didn't? What if you simply smiled, stayed still, and let their words fall useless to the floor? That calm would unsettle them more than any comeback ever could. Silence flips the balance. It exposes their insecurity and protects your power. The more they speak, the smaller they appear. The less you react, the more control you hold. Machiavelli saw what the Stoics taught long before him, that true influence doesn't beg to be understood. It moves quietly, pulling others into its gravity while never exposing itself to their chaos. When you stop arguing, you don't lose your voice. You find your presence. You learn to lead without needing to be right. You begin to see that persuasion through pressure never works. Every word thrown in argument becomes a shovel, helping the other person dig deeper into the fortress of their pride. No one wants to change when their ego is under attack. They dig in, not because you're wrong, but because their pride cannot afford surrender. Seneca once said, "Anger, if not restrained, is more harmful to us than the injury that provokes it." Arguments are just anger in disguise, a mask that pretends to be reason but hides insecurity. Every time you explain yourself to someone who only wants to dominate, you hand them the map to your emotions. You show them where to press next time. The more you react, the more predictable you become, but the one who remains calm, the one who doesn't take the bait, becomes unreadable. And in power, being unreadable is the ultimate defense. Picture a general who never shouts on the battlefield, who moves slowly, deliberately, revealing nothing. His enemies waste energy trying to guess his next move. That's what silence does. It forces others to act blindly. The man who speaks less makes the world reveal itself to him. The one who argues gives away his position. The Stoics called this mastery ataraxia, the unshakable stillness of the soul. It's not that the wise can't fight, it's that they know when not to. There's a story of a philosopher who was insulted in the street. He smiled and walked away. When asked why he didn't respond, he said, Because if a donkey kicks you, do you kick it back? The people laughed, but the lesson was sharp. Not everything deserves your reaction. Some provocations are traps dressed as challenges. Every time you argue with a fool, you step into his arena. You lose the moment you explain yourself. Silence, on the other hand, is a fortress without doors. It keeps you unreadable, unshaken, unreachable. When someone tries to pull you into the mud and you refuse to move, they drown in their own noise. That's why the powerful rarely explain themselves. They don't justify. They don't beg to be understood. They influence through presence, not persuasion. They plant ideas like seeds instead of swinging them like hammers. And because they move with restraint, their silence becomes heavier than any argument could. Machiavelli once wrote that a ruler must appear merciful, faithful, and humane, but be prepared to do the opposite when necessary. Appearance is power. And arguments, if you look closely, are the cracks where appearance shatters. Words can be twisted, quoted, and used against you. But silence is untouchable. It can't be distorted. It leaves nothing for resentment to sharpen itself on. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this: not every battle deserves your sword. Some require only your stillness. When you argue, you trade power for noise. When you stay silent, you force others to face themselves. Their frustration becomes their punishment. Their confusion becomes your armor. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. That truth alone separates the weak from the wise. The weak react, the wise observe, the weak argue, the wise influence. True power is quiet because it doesn't need to prove itself. At the end of the day, you don't master the world by defeating others. You master it by mastering yourself. You don't win by being the loudest in the room. You win by being the calmest. Silence builds presence. Arguments build enemies. When you learn to stay composed amid provocation, you stop being someone people can manipulate. You become someone they can't quite figure out, and that mystery, that calm certainty, is power in its purest form. So, the next time you feel the urge to argue, pause, breathe, let their words fade into the air, and watch how powerless they become without your reaction. Because the man who masters his tongue masters his destiny. In a world full of noise, let your silence be your statement. As we move deeper into this lesson, picture this: a man standing in the middle of a storm. The wind howls, voices rise, words fly like arrows, yet he does not move. Around him, chaos dances. Inside him, there is only stillness. That stillness is not indifference, it's control. Because the very moment you argue with someone, you step into their storm. You enter their frame, their rhythm, their chosen battleground. And once you do, you've already surrendered something sacred, the quiet power that comes from being unmoved. When you argue, you accept their invitation to lose yourself in their noise. You think you're standing your ground, but in truth, you're standing in their world. Every argument is a trap of frames. The louder you speak, the deeper you sink. Even if your logic is flawless, your composure fractures the instant you engage. The Stoics understood this long before Machiavelli observed it. They saw that the true danger of conflict isn't in losing the debate, but in losing your discipline. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." When you argue, you give that freedom away. You show where your patience breaks, where your ego bleeds, where your calm ends. And even if you win, you do not rise, you descend. You enter the mud of emotional warfare, a place where perception devours truth and noise disguises weakness as victory. Now imagine this scene. Someone insults you in public, sharp words meant to sting. Your body tenses. The crowd waits for your reaction, but you do nothing. You meet their eyes and stay silent. The air grows heavy. They expected your rage. They wanted your reaction. But your stillness becomes a mirror. They see themselves reflected, petty, loud, desperate for attention. In that silence, their strength collapses under its own weight. They begin to wrestle not with you, but with their own insecurity. That is the hidden weapon of the wise, restraint that forces others to face themselves. Machiavelli, much like the Stoics before him, saw that real strength has never belonged to the loudest voice in the room. Power lives in presence, the kind that cannot be provoked, cannot be baited, cannot be deciphered. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop reacting, you become unreadable, and the unreadable man becomes untouchable. He doesn't show his fears. He doesn't show his wounds. He doesn't even show where he draws the line. He becomes, as Seneca would say, a fortress within himself, unshaken by the siege of words. People fear what they cannot read. They respect what they cannot move. Silence, when used with wisdom, is not weakness. It is a mirror that exposes everything around it. When you stay silent, you allow others to hear the echo of their own emptiness. You let them realize that their need to dominate comes from fear, not confidence. Most people do not argue because they love truth. They argue because they hate uncertainty. They need to prove their worth by shaking yours. They need to pull you into their chaos to feel in control. But the moment you step back, when you simply observe, when you do not take the bait, something shifts. Their storm rages louder, but it has no direction. They are left swinging at shadows, fighting ghosts. And you stand untouched in the center of their confusion. Here's a truth most people will never grasp. Power doesn't come from having the last word. Power comes from needing no word at all. When you can remain silent in the face of accusation, insult, or noise, you reveal a strength that words can't capture. You're no longer a player in their game. You've become the one who sets the rules without ever announcing them. The man who speaks little but sees much holds an advantage that cannot be taken. No one knows where he stands. No one knows what he's thinking. And because of that, no one can predict his next move. That mystery becomes a shield, an armor forged not from steel, but from discipline. Think of Marcus Aurelius writing in his journal by candlelight after a day of battle and politics. He reminded himself that the opinions of others are smoke, fleeting, loud, and meaningless. What matters is not their judgment, but his response to it. When you argue, you step into their smoke and lose sight of your own clarity. But when you stay silent, you watch the smoke pass. You see through it. You remain the mountain beneath the mist, untouched, unmovable, eternal. I once witnessed a man being provoked at a negotiation table. His opponent spoke for minutes, trying every trick by sarcasm, accusation, false flattery. Everyone expected a rebuttal. Instead, the man just nodded, took a slow breath and said, "I understand," nothing more. The room fell silent. His calm unsettled everyone. It was not submission. It was dominance, quiet and deliberate. In that moment, he owned the space without raising his voice. That is what silence does. It doesn't retreat. It conquers without motion. At this stage, you begin to realize that silence is not the absence of power. It is its purest form. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need witnesses. It simply exists, steady as stone, unbothered by storms. When you no longer chase validation, no one can control you. When you no longer need to explain, no one can expose you. And when you no longer argue, no one can defeat you, because you've removed yourself from the game entirely. In the end, the man who refuses to argue isn't passive. He's patient. He's not defeated. He's detached. He stands in command while others waste their breath trying to provoke a ghost. Every insult bounces off him. Every attack dissolves in the air before it reaches his peace. He has nothing to prove, nothing to defend, nothing to lose. That's what makes him unstoppable. Silence is not the sound of retreat. It's the hum of control. It is the stillness that protects power. And when you master it, the world will no longer be able to touch you. At this stage, imagine standing before a crowd that watches your every move, every gesture, every word. Every silence is a signal. You could speak, defend, explain, argue, but you don't. You simply hold their gaze. The air thickens, the silence stretches, and somehow your stillness says more than any sentence ever could. This is not avoidance. This is command. This is what Niccolo Machiavelli and the Stoics before him understood, that silence, when mastered, is not weakness. It is the most strategic shield a person can wield. In The Prince, Machiavelli advised rulers to appear merciful, upright, humane, even religious, but to remain ready to act differently when the winds of power shifted. He understood something that Seneca would later echo in his meditations on character. Appearances are not lies, they are armor. When used wisely, they protect your peace and preserve your influence. But the moment you argue, you lower that armor. To argue is to reveal emotion, to show insecurity, to open your chest to the spear. It is the crack in the mask that reveals the trembling hand beneath. And once people see it, they never forget it. Here's where the true danger lies. Argument invites dissection. The more you speak, the more you give away. Each word becomes a doorway for others to study you, to weigh your motives, your fears, your pride. You think you are defending yourself, but in truth, you are offering them a map of your weaknesses. In the courtrooms of life, in negotiation tables, in the quiet politics of relationships, the loud man loses before the conversation even begins. The wise man, he speaks once and lets silence finish the rest. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line is not just philosophy, it is strategy. The more you live your principles, the less you need to prove them. Those who truly hold power rarely argue. They make statements. They leave hints. They plant thoughts like seeds in the minds of others and let time water them. And when they do speak, they speak so little that their words echo. They know that in the game of power, the loudest man is never the strongest. The loudest man tries to convince. The strongest man doesn't need to. Now imagine the subtle chessboard of influence. The impulsive man argues over every move, explaining why his strategy is right, exposing his intent with every word. The stoic man watches. He lets others speak until they have revealed their entire plan. He observes their reactions, their insecurities, their need to be validated. He lets them drain themselves through speech. Then, when he finally moves, his action lands like thunder after long silence, impossible to ignore, impossible to resist. That is precision. That is discipline. Even in leadership, the same rule holds. The manager who argues with his team erodes his authority. The executive who defends every decision breeds doubt. But the leader who listens more than he speaks, who doesn't announce his moves but lets results reveal them, becomes unshakable. People trust his calm because it signals mastery. They may not always understand his silence, but they feel its weight. Presence, not persuasion, builds respect. Machiavelli saw it in rulers. Marcus saw it in the mind. Seneca saw it in the heart. The lesson is universal. Speak when you must, but never to prove. There's an ancient Roman tale of a general who stood before his soldiers after a crushing victory. The men waited for a speech. Instead, he removed his helmet, looked at the horizon, and said only one sentence: "We did what we must." Then he walked away. No speech, no boasting. Yet his men never forgot that moment. Because silence leaves space for meaning to grow. It lets others fill it with reverence. Words may impress the mind, but silence engraves itself in the soul. Machiavelli understood that an argument may win logic, but it always loses hearts. When you corner someone in debate, they might nod, but inside they resent you. They feel humiliated, and resentment never dies quietly. It ferments, it plots, it grows into rebellion. Seneca warned, "A victory over another's mind is a dangerous triumph, for no one loves his conqueror." You might win the moment, but you lose the man. And in leadership, as in life, that loss is fatal. So, what do the wise do instead? They maneuver, not argue. They let others speak first, spend their energy explaining, justifying, revealing their hand. Meanwhile, the quiet observer remains composed, patient, gathering leverage. When he finally moves, it is not out of passion, but precision. He does not react, he redirects. That calm is not emptiness, it's calculation. Every pause holds purpose. Every silence is a step ahead. Look closely at history's true tacticians, the diplomats who prevented wars, the generals who ended them, the thinkers who reshaped civilizations. None of them wasted their strength in noise. They won by observing longer than others could stand to wait. They understood that stillness itself can be strategy. The more unreadable you are, the more unpredictable you become. And in that unpredictability lies safety. Because no one can strike what they cannot see. To be unreadable is not to be distant. It's to be deliberate. It's the difference between reacting and ruling. The Stoic doesn't hide from the world, he simply refuses to hand it the keys to his inner fortress. The calm man, the one who listens deeply and speaks rarely, becomes the axis around which chaos spins. People are drawn to him because he radiates what they lack: self-command. He doesn't need to demand loyalty. His composure earns it. At the end of the day, your silence is not emptiness. It's strength disguised as stillness. It's the invisible hand that shapes outcomes without ever exposing itself to attack. It's your highest form of discipline, your way of saying, "I do not play your game." Words can be twisted. Silence cannot. Arguments can be lost. Silence cannot. Presence can be doubted, but it cannot be denied. So when life tries to bait you into noise, into proving, defending, explaining, pause. Let them speak. Let them expose their weakness through their need to be heard. Then, when the moment comes, move like water, smooth, decisive, inevitable. Remember this: silence outsmarts chaos. It doesn't need to shout to win. It just needs to endure long enough for every storm to run out of breath. Entering the next stage, imagine a man standing before a crowd that doubts him. Voices rise around him, demanding proof, demanding reaction. Yet he doesn't speak, he doesn't defend. He simply looks, calm and certain, as if their noise could never reach him. That moment is not silence born of fear. It's silence born of strength. Because silence, not argument, is the true language of power. Niccolo Machiavelli knew it. So did the Stoics. Both understood that the first step to mastering any outcome begins with mastering your own emotions. Before you can lead, you must first learn not to be led, especially by the pull of your own need to be understood. When you rush to explain yourself, to justify your worth, to prove your point, you're not asserting strength, you're pleading for recognition. It's a quiet kind of begging that says, please see me, please agree with me, but why must truth shout to be real? Why must it fight to exist? If what you stand on is solid, it needs no defense. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Power doesn't speak to be heard. It speaks to move, and then it moves in silence." Machiavelli stripped this truth of moral weight and revealed it as pure strategy. If your position is strong, you don't argue, you act. You don't defend, you demonstrate. You don't announce your power, you embody it. Arguing then becomes the disguise of insecurity. It's the fear that without explanation you'll be dismissed. It's the desperation to anchor your worth to other people's shifting opinions. But the one who has truly mastered himself knows better. He knows that approval is a currency that loses value the more it's spent. He knows that influence doesn't come from being understood, it comes from being unshaken. The most composed man is not feared because he is aggressive. He is feared because he is immune. You can't bait him, you can't provoke him. You can't pull him into the chaos you live in. While others fight for the last word, he stands beyond the fight itself. He doesn't seek to win the room, he becomes the room. Seneca once wrote that no man is more powerful than he who has himself in his own power. That's what silence is, the outward expression of total inner command. Now imagine this in the world you live in every day. You see it in the office, in business meetings, in conversations online. The one who argues over every detail, who sends long emotional replies to prove he's right, is never respected, only tolerated. He reveals his attachment to the outcome, his dependence on validation. His leverage slips with every word. But the one who listens, nods, and speaks only when it shifts the entire room, that man controls the atmosphere. He isn't remembered for noise. He's remembered for precision. His restraint becomes presence. Even in love and friendship, the pattern is the same. Argument turns affection into rivalry. It transforms what was once connection into a contest of dominance. Every word becomes ammunition. Every silence becomes a battlefield. And the one who must always be right loses not because he's wrong, but because he's transparent. When emotion drives the dialogue, the conversation becomes a war between egos. But the one who steps back, who recalibrates, who lets action, not anger, speak for him, wins something far greater than an argument. He wins mastery. Control, as the Stoics taught, was never about overpowering others. It was about mastering the self so fully that no one else's chaos can pull you from your center. The man who controls himself can never be controlled by others. The one who holds his calm in the middle of noise is untouchable. And that kind of composure, quiet, still, steady, is what frightens the proud and confuses the manipulative. It disarms both enemies and friends alike, because it cannot be anticipated. It cannot be matched. Look at the digital world, the public arena where everyone rushes to defend their image, their name, their ideas. The one who reacts to every insult, who argues with strangers, becomes predictable, diminished, defined by reaction. He's no longer a person of substance, only a collection of responses. But the one who holds his tongue, who lets the noise pass, who allows time, truth, and action to defend him, he becomes something rare. He becomes untouchable. Mystery is born from his silence, and mystery, as Marcus Aurelius hinted, is not an accident. It's a weapon of the wise. Because here's the deeper pattern. When someone argues with you, they're not seeking truth. They're seeking control. They want to pull you into their frame, their rhythm, their emotional quicksand. The moment you step in, you're no longer standing on solid ground. They now control the tone, the tempo, and the terrain. But if you stay silent, if you observe without judgment, if you let their need to be right expose their own weakness, you win without a fight. The battle collapses under its own weight. Machiavelli never wasted his strength chasing fairness. He understood that life does not reward those who fight for perception. It rewards those who act with precision. In the realm of real results, arguments are poison. They turn small sparks into lasting fires. They harden neutral hearts into opposition. They make enemies out of those who might have been allies. And worst of all, they strip you bare. Every argument you enter reveals the blueprint of your emotions. You show the world your thresholds, where you break, where you burn. So what do you do instead? You observe, you listen, you absorb everything but reveal nothing. You measure the terrain quietly, you wait. And when the time is right, you move, not with explanation, not with noise, but with finality. No wasted words, no grand defense. You move cleanly, silently, with precision so sharp it ends the discussion before it begins. That is the ultimate Stoic act. To refuse to argue, to speak only when necessary, to let silence carry the weight your words never could. Because silence cannot be twisted. It cannot be quoted against you. It cannot be defeated. It floats above the chaos, untouchable, indifferent to the storms that consume lesser minds. At the end of the day, the man who understands this truth becomes immovable. His greatest weapon is not his argument, it's his indifference. For in that indifference lies freedom, and in that freedom lies an advantage no force of words will ever overcome. The one who does not argue doesn't lose power. He becomes power itself. Now imagine standing in a room full of noise, voices clashing, egos colliding, everyone desperate to be right. Yet you remain still, you say nothing, and slowly the noise bends around your silence. That's not weakness, that's power. The kind of strength Niccolo Machiavelli and the Stoics both understood, the kind few today can wield. The power of silence isn't just in what it prevents, it's in what it creates. It creates gravity, it sharpens presence, it draws people in while keeping your energy intact. In a world where noise is mistaken for importance, silence becomes the clearest signal of mastery. Machiavelli knew that silence isn't emptiness, it's tension, control, weight. Every argument scatters that weight. It drains focus and exposes emotion. Every reaction teaches them your rhythm. Silence keeps them guessing. But when you stay composed, speaking only when it truly matters, your silence becomes a force that shapes outcomes without revealing your hand. Picture a co-worker who tries to embarrass you in front of others. If you argue back, you feed the spectacle. But if you stay calm, address only what's necessary, and refocus on results, you deflate the tension. You don't defend, you deliver. People notice. They respect what you don't say, more than what you do. Or imagine a partner lashing out in emotion, hoping to drag you into the storm. If you match their anger, you lose twice, your peace and your power. But if you stand still, letting the fire burn itself out, you win without fighting. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Even in the digital age, the rule holds. The one who argues online, defending every slight, becomes predictable, reactive, emotional, small. But the one who lets others shout into the void becomes untouchable. Silence in this arena isn't avoidance, it's filtration. It separates what deserves your attention from what doesn't. Why is silence so hard? Ego is the whisper that begs to be right, the noise that fears being unseen. But the Stoic learns to watch that impulse, not obey it. Every argument avoided is information gained. The more others speak, the more they reveal their intentions, insecurities, and blind spots. And the more you stay quiet, the more they start to wonder who you are. People don't fear silence, they fear what it reveals about themselves. Here's the paradox. The one who refuses to argue often ends up being the most persuasive, because silence cannot be debated, it cannot be refuted. The quiet man isn't yielding, he's observing, choosing, waiting. His silence isn't retreat, it's precision. His words, when they finally come, land like iron. Machiavelli saw it clearly. Every argument is a lesson you give your opponent. Each defense reveals your values and fears. You hand them the keys to your reactions. But if they can't provoke you, if they can't read you, you deny them power. You become unreadable and therefore untouchable. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you speak only with purpose. The Stoics called this self-command, the discipline to choose when, how, and why to act. The calm man becomes the one others look to when storms rise. His silence steadies those who've lost theirs. He doesn't need to demand respect. His stillness earns it. In leadership, you see it everywhere. The executive who argues loses authority. The leader who listens, pauses, and acts without fanfare, he commands trust. People follow not because he talks well, but because he moves with certainty. Sun Tzu once said, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." The Stoics would call that the victory of self-mastery. So when provoked, pause, breathe, let tension rise without feeding it. Respond, if you must, with calm, finite words. You're entitled to your view. Then stop. Let silence do what argument never can. Reveal truth through absence. In that quiet, others begin to see themselves. Because the truth is simple, you don't need to win arguments when you've already won yourself. When your peace is internal, no insult can move you. When your worth isn't hanging on the opinions of others, no attack can shake it. The man who refuses to argue doesn't lose voice, he gains presence. His composure becomes a mirror that exposes others' chaos. At the end of the day, the greatest displays of power aren't found in shouting matches or clever comebacks. They're found in the man who stays calm while the world demands a storm. He doesn't seek respect, he embodies it. Because silence, when mastered, speaks louder than 1,000 desperate words ever could. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to breathe and let it sink in. True strength isn't in arguing, it's in mastering your silence. In the comments, write "Stay silent" as your quiet reminder of inner power. If you found value here, feel free to subscribe and continue walking this path of calm strength. Stay grounded, stay patient, and keep growing wiser with every moment that tries to test your peace.